Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
Evening listeners, a bit of a special Midnight Chats for you tonight. As you know, we usually record these podcasts behind closed doors in the quietest spot that we can find. But on some rare occasions, we do head out into the outside world just to see what that looks like before we scurry on back to our little office in East London. Back at the start of September, we headed to Llama Tree Gardens in Dorset, which is the picturesque home of End of the Road. Now, if you don't know it, it's an amazing festival, and I particularly enjoyed this year, not just because the sun was shining and that at Loud and Quiet we got to kick the whole thing off with the opening night party, which was really fun, but because I got to see so much good music. As part of the stuff that we do with End of the Road, we take our podcast gear along with us. And for the third year running, we've recorded an episode of Midnight Chats live on stage at the festival. We nickname it Midday Chats for the weekend because we record it at lunchtime when everybody's easing themselves into the day with a coffee or usually something stronger than that. In the past, we've recorded episodes with Anna Meredith and last year, Nadine Shah. Both of those are still available to listen to. They're episodes 12 and 33 in the archive if you do want to go back and check those out. This year, my guest was Josh T. Pearson. He played on the Friday night on the main wood stage and joined me on Saturday lunchtime at the piano stage for this conversation. If you don't know Josh, he found cult fame with the Texas-based band Live to Experience in the early 2000s. They made the seminal post-rock album Texas Jerusalem Crossroads and then split up and did separate things. Josh went away, promised he'd grow a beard until he made a second album and eventually emerged a decade later with a very big beard and his first solo album, which was Last of the Country Gentlemen in 2011. But to bring things right up to speed, he returned this year with his second solo album, The Straight Hits, which marked a different sound and a different clean-shaven appearance for Josh. This came as Live to Experience played their first show together in 15 odd years at Guy Garvey's Meltdown in 2016, and they also did Primavera Sound in Barcelona this year. Just to paint the picture of this podcast you're about to hear, a few hundred people gathered at the piano stage, which is located in the woods at the festival and is decorated like an old person's living room with lampshades and vintagey chairs and obviously a piano. Josh was running on Rockstar time and arrived triumphantly about 2 minutes before we started recording this on one of those festival buggies that you see because his keys player had a broken foot. Josh had a cigarette in one hand and a glass of white wine in the other and settled in for this conversation. I'm fairly confident that he'd had a late night before and he was putting the blame squarely on his vegan sound guy who smokes a lot of weed apparently. Anyway, as you're about to hear, Josh is less of an interviewee and more of a storyteller, what my mum would affectionately refer to as a bit of a character. This is one of the more unruly episodes of Midnight Chats that we've recorded, but also one of the most honest, endearing and entertaining. But just quickly, before we get into that, if you didn't catch Stu announcing the news on the last podcast, we are now officially available on Spotify. So if you prefer to listen to your podcasts on Spotify, you can now search for us and you'll find all the old episodes and all the new episodes that we make over there. So let's get into the conversation. Thank you, End of the Road Festival. Thank you, Josh T. Pearson. Thank you to all of those who came to listen and those of you listening now, of course. This is Midnight Chats, episode 57. Please will you join me in welcoming Josh T. Pearson.
Hey. Thank you. God bless you. Almost worth it.
Josh, you already said that you are feeling the
sins
pinch of the first night of the festival.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm a professional. I'll be up and ready in a couple hours.
How was the show last night? You played here.
It was good. Nobody died. I was happy to hear that. I had a whole team. They got a new record out, Smash Hits, and we just put a band together a couple months ago, real quick. Kind of a new band a couple weeks ago. These one-off shows are kind of hard because you just kind of get everything going and then you just stop. So about halfway through the set, you're like, that's pretty good. Let's do it again. But 2 weeks ago, we played La Rue de Rock, which is in Saint-Malo in Brittany, and we practiced with a new drummer on Thursday, Ollie from the Duke Spirit, and then a new guitar player on Friday, Laurent, who's a Frenchman. And then we played Saturday, right before Patti Smith, which was pretty cool. We fist bumped on the way out. I was pulling for patty cakes, but she wasn't having it. I'm kidding. None of that happened except the playing before Patti Smith and the practicing. Anyway, yeah. So it was good. Yeah. But I feel if we did it again, I'd be better now. It's a big stage. I was thinking we were doing the garden stage. I was just telling the stories. I was in my head, in my practicing, I was playing the garden stage and just killing it, And then we get to the wood stage, like, shit, this is a little bigger. I wasn't prepared for this. But I think it was okay. Yeah, people don't move around as much. And it's nervous because this is my 4th time here, and I love you all, and I recognize a bunch of your faces, and it feels like family. So, and it's a new sort of bit of a departure from the last stuff. So I was happy that people were there.
You did something that I've never seen anybody do before at a show, which was that about 15 minutes before you started, I was walking up, and I could already hear your voice, and I was like, "Has Josh come on stage early?" But you were playing your new record through the PA system and using us as guinea pigs.
Totally. Absolutely, that's what I was doing. It's called Controversy. It's a punk rock hee-haw comedy album that nobody wants to touch. For some reason, I think it's a hit. That's great. Comedy used to be a lot in country stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, I recorded it over a year ago. It's great.
Yeah. Is there a song on there about when I arrived? There was a song that was referencing like Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah, there's one, Facebook for Life. It's just about, it's a silly story about a guy who gets a Facebook message from an old fling 20 years later, and he's married, and it interrupts the family flow. The wife's having none of it. And a modern, it's silly and lighthearted, but it's touching on a bigger, greater catastrophe, and we'll never say goodbye again. It's just such a completely different world now. Parting is a thing of the past,
Are you a social media fan, or are you generally don't want to touch it?
I think it's the best and the worst. I was kidding yesterday with the Instagram when I said, y'all ever heard of Instagram? It's killed me. It's just, I put my handle that I wanted to make it Josh T. Pearson officially sucks at Instagram, but there are too many characters, so I made it Josh T. Pearson officially rules. Because I don't have enough followers to get the actual official thing, So maybe y'all should follow me, and then I can just be official.
Yeah, we need a blue tick. Come on, people.
I think Instagram is really the panopticon of the modern age. It's like the actual apple, the belly of the beast. When we're really in the midst of creating a new species, and the next 20 years are going to get. You think this 20 was crazy? The next 20 are going to get just so wild. I think they put singularity at around mid-30s, 20, 36, 38, something like that. But it's gonna be a crazy, interesting time. And I really do think that something like Instagram really is biting the apple and tasting the fruit. And you have all knowledge of good and evil. And you can't look away. It's really something.
This comedy album that you've written, when and you said you wrote it about a year ago. Where were you at that time, and why did you want to make that album?
Well, I'd been kind of toying with it for a few years, and I'm writing a lot of silly, playful stuff. I write all the time. I just never put out because I'm Christian,
That deserved a few more laughs, I think.
And when I was at the election in London at the, what do you call it, the American Embassy, and I don't know if y'all got the memo, but Donald Trump won. And a friend invited me, and there's a bunch of left-wing liberals there, of course, because if you're in London, anyway. And because of the time change, it was like 4:30, 4 in the morning when the returns started coming in, and all these liberals had been drinking all day really delicious wine, and they knew that Hillary was going to win. They just knew that was the reality. And when the reality started switching, like, oh, good God, this cannot be happening. It was like Night of the Living Dead, and there were like packs of women in corners weeping, like up hands in the air, like, this cannot be happening. Like, man, this is really getting serious. America just elected a gambling casino owner whose sole purpose is to make money off the weakness of man and have sort of flesh, what do you call it, contest with women based on their aesthetic appeal and only things that they had nothing to do with. Anyway, we got to do something about this. And it was an interesting response. I'm American. I never really felt that before. I didn't feel an allegiance to it. It wasn't xenophobic or jingoistic or anything like that. And kind of until then, it's like, with this information, this confirmed bias that we're in with technology is getting really serious, where your realities are becoming so separate, and you can't even talk about, you can't have a dialogue. And so part of the controversy stuff was trying to use humor as a device just to poke fun at all sides, and we need to be able to talk about this, y'all. This is serious, and kind of break down some of the social constructs. There's one song in there I'm really proud of called Boy Named Straight, which is like my modern version of Boy Named Sue. And it's about a redneck who gets really drunk one night, and he goes to the bar, and this other redneck is there and kind of looking at him, and he's not really sure what's going on, but I think he's kind of hitting on him, and they start playing pool, and he wakes up the next day, and he's alone in his room, and there's broken glass everywhere, and his butt's real sore, and he's sore all over. Sorry, kids. And Brokeback Mountain's playing on his computer on repeat, and he has what he calls a existential crisis. He just doesn't know what happens. And there's a little twist at the end, really playful and silly. But I really think that that old adage, if you want to speak the truth, you got to make them laugh. So, and then something in the last 10 years, I've spent more time investing. Since when I came out of that last The Country Gentleman thing, I'd been so focused on just introverted despair and down this really heavy, taking all the energies upon me. I'm trying to turn the corner where I try to tap into humor more, and they say that's the hardest art form. So I don't know if I'm getting there, but I think with some of those songs I arrived at a good place. And if you can make somebody laugh, even if I realize I'm burning down the whole thing before of like integrity and stuff, but if I can make somebody giggle and feel good, like that feels all right. Laughter really is the best medicine, and it heals people. And
do you go back to Texas often?
Yeah, I've been in Austin for a few years now.
Okay, that's where you're based right now, because you've lived all over the place.
Yeah, Austin's not really Texas, but you get to say you're from Texas and then be in this little liberal bubble where people read books and stuff and eat healthy. It's awesome. They say you have Austin, then you have Texas all around it. And that's not all true. There's 4 main cities in Texas: Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And they're, pretty liberal and urban. Then you go 10, 20 minutes out, and it's just rural stuff. So it's split down the middle demographically as the rest of the country. Houston's, I think it just eclipsed Chicago for the third biggest city, And we don't even think about Houston up in Dallas-Fort Worth. You forget it's in Texas. So it's New York, L.A., Houston now. It used to be New York, L.A., Chicago, Houston. Anyway, there's 28 million people in Texas. It's just a little bit bigger than France, which I like to remind French people when I'm there. C'est vrai? Yeah, oui, c'est vrai.
How is Texas these days? Because like you say, it's
hot. It's really hot. It's like 40 degrees right there. It's so hot. That's why people are crazy. It's just the weather is relentless, It's like religion, flat land with enormous skies, and then 40-degree heat, which 100 for us. That just makes you crazy.
Yeah.
We stay indoors a lot. We use the air conditioning. God bless America. I like to provide economy, generate a lot of energy and stuff. I always do that thing when my friends always bitch about gentrification and stuff, and I'll play not devil's advocate. I'll use these phrases that are in their skill set with gentrification and say, man, can't believe another new thing moved in here. And then I'll say, like, man, I like all this life and this growth, It's nice to see movement and, people healthy. Anyway, the whole world's flipped over, man. Gentrified. It's really something.
Who's seen Live to Experience in the last couple of years when they've been playing?
God bless y'all. That's awesome.
You played a show.
Where were the rest of you? Where were you then? When I needed you.
Yeah.
What have you?
Will they have another chance to see Live to Experience?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. Make us an offer. Please, we need it. I don't know, fumes. I don't know. It's demand. We got offered one gig this year at Primavera, and we were so thrilled, honored 20 years later. It's just it's an honor. It's an honor to have you all here. There's no 5-year plan here. I'm not surprised to be here at all, and I'm really grateful for the joke I say. I'd like to thank each and every one of you. So if you could just form a line here on the left. I'd love to. Yeah, we'll do it. How much?
Yeah. Where's my checkbook?
It's only these gigs. It's just we haven't even, broke even. Which putting out the remix, we worked really hard that year to remix it and extensively on the graphics and stuff, just to kind of have it as I originally wanted it with the big fold out. And I think we almost broke even. It's just it's labor, it's love, it's art for art's sake, But we were toying with the idea. I definitely have songs. We had finished half of the next record before I went a little crazy, but we'll see what's around the bend. I'd like to see what happens with a comedy record. If I could tickle America's fancy and really kind of win them, and then you sneak up behind them with this really scary ass shit, that'd be awesome. Whoa.
Good plan.
That's crazy. I like when people change. They just don't know what's coming out next in life and in love, and it just keeps it exciting. But with art too, it would have been selling out for me to make the same kind of record. I have so many heartbreak songs, staggering stuff, but I needed to try it this other way for a second, just to kind of burn down myself, to not be stifled or trapped by it. But that wasn't your question at all. Huh?
When Live to Experience went and played Guy Garvey's Meltdown in 2016, that was obviously your first show in a long time. Was it simply the invitation that prompted doing that again, or were you thinking about it anyway?
Yeah, and we're men now. We had enough, went to go our separate ways, and there were real soul issues involved that were kind of corrupted the section we were at. A couple of us, I think it would have deformed our nature or spirit had we kept on that path. So it was important to call it quits. I think for the greatest experience in life, and we had rounded those corners and dealt with our issues, and we were on speaking terms again. And let's try this. It's fun. And there was the offer there because it's a public festival. They had a budget that would allow 3 men in separate states separate countries to get together and practice for a couple weeks, and then fly us over, hire the gear, those international flights, and pay for the, Lee from Leeds for him and his marijuana. And we had a light guy. It was awesome. They really treated us like stars at that little at the Royal Festival Hall. I love South Mink Center. It's one of my favorite. I played all those rooms. So it was really nice, and I'm glad we pulled it off. It was a lot of pressure because it's such a boutique little niche band, and we had Fallen over here in Europe in 2001, but even in Texas, it's just like it's a small demographic. So there was a lot of pressure on us to play as well as it was in the minds of the people from 20 years ago, because it was really a special thing. And we realized playing those tunes, this is really special, y'all. We just worked so hard on those tunes, beat them up for a year, and just put such grace in between the notes, and it was really a joy to revisit. It was like time travel, going back to that place in your head,
Emotionally, what was that experience like of getting the three of you back together? Was it a bit of a roller coaster, or has it been? Because you obviously, like you say, you did Primavera this year.
Yeah, it's neat. We're really buddies, and they would spend a few years together, so it was just like with your childhood friends again. Andy's doing great. He's in Portland making wine. That's why he couldn't be at these JTP shows. He makes this organic wine. It's really delicious. You know, it's really cool without the sulfates. There's no hangover. You can just drink it and drink it, drink it, and then you wake up and you feel awesome. No one tells me shit. I started smoking 4 months ago. It's so stupid. I was quit for 10 years. It's a terrible drug, but it's awesome, you know?
And what about relearning some of those songs?
I'll tell you what it is. It's that you can want something more than anything else in the world, like 20 times a day, and get it. Like, I want more than anything right now, and then you get to get it. And you get to do that like 20 times a day. And it's the worst. It's just awful. They're so bad for you. Where the kids went, you always feel guilty smoking in front of children. It's neat how innocence brings out the things you shouldn't be doing, you know? I quit drinking for 7 years. 7 of the worst years of my life. Mama didn't raise no quitter. Stupid. Thank y'all. Good night. No, sorry, I interrupted you again.
No, it's fine. You went back and watched old YouTube videos of yourself.
I did.
To
True
relearn
story.
the Lift to Experience
The
songs.
thing was, it was so long ago. There's like no one had cell phone cameras.
No,
There's like so little footage. Like, I don't know what we're playing. And they try to Google it. Like, there was one video from a show in LA, and for some stupid reason, thank the good Lord, this guy did a close-up of my hand for like 30 minutes. It was like he was being all artful, you know? Like, this is awesome. It was like, that's what that chord was. And here's another thing that's kind of interesting. Some of the parts, because it was so intricate, so many little parts he played just one time. It was, you know, composed really specifically. And I couldn't get a couple things. I was playing acoustic, running, practicing, and then I couldn't get it until I plugged in the pedals. And I guess because the way the synapses are connected in the brain, they would start coming back to me because you're hitting all those things at once. And as we link things together in our mind, as we do with language and stuff, that's pretty cool.
And the experience now, you're obviously out on the road performing your solo material. You've been playing shows in the UK regularly the last couple of years. There's been a number of times in your career where you've kind of, to the listener's ear, kind of disappeared off the radar and gone and done your thing. How important is it to do that, to get away from things and work on things in isolation and then come back?
Well, this is more for, that was just me, the inward journey. I was never like a part of the system or rock and roll. I mean, I didn't put out a record for 10 years. That wasn't an accident. I really specifically chose to go this other way of introversion and introspection. And just like, if I were to put out good records and you be part of that system, then you lose a different sort of life path. People treat you differently, and then I wanted to explore everything of poverty and even, like I say, fame, even on that sort of level. Like, I wasn't willing to pay that sort of, I couldn't afford to pay that price, you know. And my own growth, I just couldn't do that. And I felt like I rounded a corner where I kind of gathered enough of what I needed to experience, and then I can put that back. So now I would love to put out, and I was going to put this into the universe, if I could put out a record a year or 2 records a year, I definitely have the material, but it may just be time too that I'm older, closer to death. I'm in my 40s now, and you want to see a physical mark. I don't know. I don't know why I do anything, truthfully, but it's not without concerted effort, and I write every day, and even just for, self-help, I try to write a little something each day. It's not for a lack of songs, but if I could try to put out a couple records a year and make some people smile, that'd be really neat for me. But if I hope there's still time.
Yeah. What kind of person are you? Are you a planner, or do you just let things happen? Like, do you know where you're going to be living
I have
or
no
working
idea.
in? Like,
I mean, the last 15 years, I've been in a suitcase for years. The last few years I've been more stationary. I used to could float around. Like, I went to Berlin for 2 weeks and stayed 2 years, led by like a spirit walk for 15 years. And then I'm trying to transition that off a little more. It hasn't happened yet, but these shows, like booking 2 months in advance, is kind of the longest I've ever booked a show. Actually, the Lift show was the most advanced we'd ever said, I will be at this place in 4 months from now, So I don't say that as a good thing or a bad thing. It was just, oh, yeah, it was what it was.
How has it felt to put down some roots again in Texas for the moment, at least?
Nice. It seemed like I spent maybe 6-7 years in Europe, on and off, 2 years there, and then I go back to the countryside in complete isolation, and then go back to Europe. And it was kind of nice in those foreign countries because man needs community. No man is an island, all that. But you could be around community in a foreign country where you don't speak the language, but you're still around people. So you're not taken out of your headspace with all the simple, mundane stuff people say all the time on the tube or whatever. And I was like, and she was like, and they were like, that sort of thing. So you can be alone and still be around people. But the last few years, I kind of felt a call toward home, like to be around the familiarity of my youth and the humor, really, where you can say one line, and even just in a certain inflection, and it's agreed upon that you know what it is. Actually, that 2 years in Berlin, without going back to the States, where you really started to feel just like a foreigner, and after that, you're a foreigner everywhere. You're never at home, and that was really neat to feel like a foreigner, and it developed other levels of compassion and understanding. And it was interesting. Like I grew up in Texas, never learned any Spanish. I took French for some dumb reason because I was attracted to art crap and stuff. There are no French people in Texas, but after 2 years. That 1 2 year stint straight, when I came back to Texas, the first thing immediately, I was like, shit, I need to learn some Spanish. And a lot of Spanish people, like just without even thinking about it, and got some Spanish books, just pleasantries, making them giggle and laugh and make them feel wanted and helped, that they're not alone. And it means a lot. And I always still try to do that. Like in London, you always learn how to say thank you in like 10 different languages just to tell the Polish girl behind the counter, Dziękuję, they light up just because they're working hard. And if you go to another country to get a job, like, that sucks. Anyway.
What do you take?
That wasn't your question either.
That's fine.
I'm just talking freestyle. Lee, man, it's marijuana. Dang it.
What kind of things do you really enjoy about the lifestyle that you live at the moment? Because
nothing.
No.
I mean, I'm tired. It's really the people you meet along the way, along the journey, and especially with that kind of boutique stuff. When I was doing that more performance art, where it's just based on the live show, the only people that were coming were real fans. And there's a good quote by John, who's that filmmaker in Baltimore, the little mustache. John Waters is a filmmaker, avant-garde filmmaker in Baltimore, boutique films, and he was asked a question about fame, and he said, well, the good thing about being at my level, if anyone recognizes you on the street, chances are high that if they recognize you for your work, they're going to be into pretty cool stuff, So you want to kind of talk to them, and that's the blessing of choosing that other path where you don't play by the system and where it becomes your boss and then your slave driver and put out a record now and you have to wait here, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But it's the people you meet, fellow travelers, drawn to those vibrations that are really seeking for some sort of help or to help others to deal with their own life or translate their life experience into something.
And you got to meet presumably lots of other bands, artists that you were fans of along the way. You mentioned Neil Halstead last night on stage. Who else have you met along the way that that's been a real thrill?
Warren Ellis. I love his playing so much. He's just a real player in the old tradition. Nick Cave, I'm a huge fan of his work. Kevin Shields. Yeah, I've been real blessed and honored. Dustin O'Halloran, I love his piano stuff, and I met him before he did the piano stuff. We went on our first tours together. He was in a band called Divix, and was on Bella Union, and he went on to put out 2 of my favorite piano records ever. It's been a real neat blessing, the people you meet along the way, and then you think, well, I must be doing something right if you get to meet your heroes. I'd like to meet Bob Dylan, but I don't think that's going to happen. I never met Willie Nelson. I'd like to meet Willie Nelson. I actually wrote a hit song. All my friends have met Willie Nelson, so why can't I? It's available on YouTube. All my loser friends have met Willie. Anyway, I'd ask the Lord if I could meet Bob Dylan, but I know that he's still limited with certain, Anyway. How are y'all doing? You're good? Man, I'm so happy. I can't even believe you're here. It's really neat. Makes me super happy. We're playing here at 5:15. And there's a signing at 3:00. Did I say that already? A rough trade.
Would you?
I would.
I mean, those periods where you've not been.
Ask me again.
Would you?
I'm not a vegetarian because I love animals. I'm a vegetarian because I hate plants. That's good. I heard that one the other day. That tickled my fancy. Oh.
Is Texas humor generally like the one-liners? Like, is that like?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. In the periods that you've been touring and making music and doing this as your like primary job, would you ever go and do another job? Like, would you quote unquote do a normal job?
I gotta work construction in between gigs sometimes.
Okay, so when you go back to
actually, I had a really neat moment. It's gonna suck for me, and I hate to take away any mystique. My friends joke because that comedy record management thinks, hey, you're gonna ruin your career, and then I say that to my friends, and they're like, career? What career? So. Yeah, not to ruin any mystique, but I had a nice moment 6 months ago in Texas where I'm working this construction gig where I'm just clearing the site and I'm loading one of those canisters, those big containers, with all the shit that's around. And I realized that it's 30 years later and I'm doing the exact same gig, the work that I did when I was 12 years old. I'm clearing shit off construction sites. Like, this is a neat little loop. That's cool. And I was standing on top of because I filled the whole container. And I was standing on there to rearrange scrap to get more stuff. The big, like the train containers. Yeah. So I'm standing there and just start laughing. It's like, this is what you were doing when you were 12. That's cool. I worked a lot when I was a kid. A bunch of different jobs. And then 27, when Lyft happened, we started to move. And I was a carpenter before that, so I'm really handy with wood. So that's my fallback stuff. But I was clear cedar sometimes, or a friend's dad. It's hand to mouth stuff. Like we did these 2 months of gigs, and I think I shouldn't say this in front of the band member, but I think we'll manage to get the whole band paid. But I'm not gonna make. I mean, I've had 5 pounds when I got here. My card wasn't working, so it's not a. Yeah, we gotta keep putting. You gotta keep putting out records if you want. Anyway, you gotta build profile, bullet, and all that. And I just never did that, so I'm paying for it now, which is fine. I'm happy to be here and happy to pay for it. That's the price you pay to go that other route. And working's good for you, doing that other work too. Yeah. You just think, man, I really should be doing music instead of loading trash. After Lyft I went out to the countryside and I was a janitor at this Christian nonprofit, just donating my time for a couple of years. And a fix-it man. I'm really good at plumbing too. Electricity, I'm not very good at. Invisible stuff that kills you, stay away from that. But pretty much everything else, I'm really handy in really good at chainsawing. Super good. Okay. And with weed eating, I'm like butter with those electric weed eaters. But chainsawing, I like the trees really tell you what to cut, and they're really grateful once they're cared for. They really reward, like in 2 days with rain, they're just a whole new tree full of life. Gardens like to be tended, they really do. I hate plants. I played this festival, Sea Change, a week ago. I played alone, and there was a place called Dartington Hall. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. It was really old, but they said they had gardens there that have been kept for 1,000 years. And I started laughing because I can't keep a garden for a week. No, that's not good. I got better ones.
Should we finish the podcast with a joke? Should we finish with a joke?
Oh, no. You got one?
Come on, Josh.
Oh, man. I told all the good ones yesterday. The Willie Nelson one or the chickpea joke?
They're all day.
Let's do the Willie Nelson for the podcast. There's children here, though.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Fingers in ears.
Don't say, don't answer if you know it. This is a classic joke in Texas. Y'all know who Willie Nelson is, right? Yeah, you're all music lovers. Good. And for those of you who don't, he's a Texas legend, hero, icon. He's in his 80s, a big gray beard, and he's actually a jazz player that plays country music, but a voice from God. And anyway, so the joke is, ladies, what's the worst thing to hear when you're giving Willie Nelson a blowjob? I'm not really Willie Nelson. I'm just some old guy. Anyway, Thank you. Good night.
Well, everybody join me just in saying thanks to Josh for the podcast, for joining us on the podcast. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. Don't listen. My pleasure.
Midnight Chats is a loud and quiet podcast. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.